Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to DeMista versus DeMusliM. This is the third day of the $100,000 N4C tournament. It is going to be the middle part of the sprays bracket, both players having one defeat and one victory, and both of the players had that victory against the Viper. Day number one, DeMusliM defeated the Viper, and then day number two, DeMista defeated the Viper. Currently, it's the middle part of the Swiss bracket for these players, so whoever loses this set is going to fall lower and get closer to elimination, whereas whoever is going to win this one is going to get further and further away from elimination. Starting our set is the first map being King of the Hill, not a map that you commonly see nowadays as a starter, but as a reminder, the way that this works is that each player picks one home map, and then we are going to have a second home map for each player. And of course, there is going to be a map ban as well for each. So you're going to have 6 maps that are either banned or picked by the players, and the 7th map that remains in the map pool, that is going to be the game number 1. Looking at the left side, we're going to have the Muslims spawning in as the Mongols in red, and on the right side, Mista is going to be playing French in blue, which is a very intriguing matchup because this is a matchup that Mista loves, just the other way around. French is a common civilization pick for King of the Hill, and Mista loves his Mongols on King of the Hill. I've talked about this one before when I've casted the Mista sets, and I have to say that Mista is one of the best Mongols players on King of the Hill out there. He's extremely dangerous, very smart, and I'm curious to see how he's going to play French over here, because to a certain extent I would have expected him picking Mongols over here. We'll have to look at the draft after this game to see if that was actually banned by DeMusliM, but it's possible that DeMusliM banned Mongols, which would be a smart move, given the fact that Mista is one of the best Mongol players out there. So on the right side is going to be the Mista as the French in blue, and on the left side is the Muslim in red. And you could see that the barracks was already built around the Ovu, and that means that we're going to have some spearmen coming in a matter of seconds. Now Mista is only playing with 1 scout as I see, which is something that he commonly does. Most other French players open with 2 scouts, but this is not something that Mista does very frequently. I think he only does that against Rus, so he's not going to have a tremendous amount of sheep collected. And the bigger problem here for him is that his only scout is scouting the back of his base right now, which means he has no idea what his opponent is pulling against him. This is the biggest weakness of this 1 scout build. If you're looking for sheep scouting the other parts of the map, you won't be aware of what your opponent is doing against you, and that could be very problematic against Mongols. Mista gets a couple of hits on that Khan, also gets a hit with the Scout out there. That's a great value over there for the Scout, but the Spearman now up at the battlefield. And I would think that there is a villager accompanying them. Indeed, there is the villager moving up for the Muslim, and he could start towering that berry patch, or potentially could start towering the gold mine. Now, knowing Mista, he's going to have something planned here, because I don't think that he was just planning to go for standard knights here. He knows very well that the Mongols have great responses to that. So I would be very surprised if Mista didn't have something cheesy on his mind. The Khan shot the mining camp. This is extremely important because now you're looking at Mista being unable to delete the mining camp. I was thinking about Mista being forced to delete the mining camp before the enemy forces arrive, because if he does that, the opponents can burn it down. The moment the Khan shoots that mining camp, it doesn't matter if you delete it, your opponent will still get the raid bounty. So the Muslim will be able to burn down that mining camp, and so far it's a bit of a pedestrian start over here for Mista, especially given the fact that the feudal age is not in there for him yet, which means that he's very far away from being able to make archers. So far, he's falling to the Mongols' push over here, like many other French players have fallen, and this is overly concerning for him, because oftentimes the French player is set back so much by this early push that by the time he recovers, the opponent is already in castle age. Mining camp will be set on fire, and that's 25 gold and 25 food that will fall into the hands of the Muslim thanks to that, and that's immensely helpful in Dark Age. If you think about that, 25 gold takes some time to mine, so that raiding bounty over there is helping the Muslim get a slightly faster feudal age timing over here. Lumberjacks also exposed to the spearmen for a time being, but it's going to be the tower that's going to threaten them the most. Mista, up to feudal age, I would think he will try a defensive tower for himself, as he does have the archer range up. He has made a couple of scouts, and I wonder if he wants to engage those towers with the scouts. The scouts could be his torch unit, and the archers could be the unit taking down the spearmen. Tower being built as we speak by the Muslim. He's sending some more spearmen from the south, and indeed, Mista wants to go for scouts and archers here. The scouts will just be torch units. He was probably expecting the tower rush to happen over here, and he wants to burn down these towers with the scouts. first archer arrives, and that's going to be very impactful because that first archer can potentially stop the villager from completing the tower. Tower at 60% progression, that tower should not go up here, especially with the second archer coming in. Speed arrow popped by the Khan, the spearman pushing back the archers for the time being. 80% on the tower, archers once again diving in, villager survives at 2 HP, but the archer numbers will only increase, and I don't think that DeMusliM can finish that tower at this point. He's gonna have to abandon that position, and this is a big win here for Mista, because now he can use the scouts to burn down the tower, and I would think that he's going to follow this up with professional scouts. As I said, Mista has to have something on his mind over here, because if you think about it, Mista loves to play Mongols against the French on this map. So, as much as he knows how to play Mongols on this map, he also knows how to win with French against the Mongols, because if you are playing a very good games with the Mongols against French, you are fully aware of the weaknesses of your strategies, and he can utilize that over here. And I love this combination here for Mista. He's going for the scouts, he's going to turn that into professional scouts, but those scouts are also very effective at taking down those towers. You see, he's going to send them out, and those will heal back up, so it's not even like, let's say, sending horsemen, because of course, the scouts will heal back up. And you could think about knights burning down the towers, you could heal those back up as well, but of course if you get cut off from gold, that's a problem to access. So the scouts is by far the safest and most guaranteed option to take down the tower without losing any of your forces. Now there are 2 spearmen garrisoned inside the tower, and I do see an arrow slits emplacement being placed as well by DeMusliM, but that tower is likely going down before that arrow slits finishes, and once again, Mista doesn't lose a single unit over here. He picked off the spearman, the second spearman is still alive, scouts will just ignore that, archers will turn back and pick it off. Great defense here by DeMista, and if you look at the resource banks, DeMusliM is still rather far away from Castle Age. Now the good news for DeMusliM is that at this point, Mista isn't really able to do much either. He's got a couple of archers, so if DeMusliM appears with like 3, 4, 5 horsemen, that will be difficult for Mista to fight against. For now, it looks like Mista is pushing up with the scouts though. Mista is a great innovator, I said this millions of times. He's the one that designs a lot of very cheeky and new builds over here. And just imagine the time that he could spend on this. What I'm thinking is that he's sitting there at the LAN, watching other games, and he's thinking, oh shoot, I could try something like this. And then he just comes up with a brand new build order in just one day or so. And of course, he probably came into this tournament preparing quite a lot of strategies here, and he knows exactly that he's up against a tough opponent here. Missed at 96 heart rate. Yesterday, when he saw his games, it was like 50, and I was doubting whether or not that was realistic or correct. Some people said that it's realistic, or at least it's a possibility, but 100 seems a lot more realistic, to be honest, so I'm suspecting that yesterday that heart rate indicator was a little off for Mista, and he's coming in with the scouts. And at this point, the idea is that the scouts, once again, are cheap torch units. You can get quite a lot of these out here, and you can start burning down the pastures, you can start potentially burning down the Ovu. You see, DeMusliM is going to pull back the pasture, but when he sees it safe, he's going to just take it back right next to the Ovu. The problem for Mista right now is that he doesn't have an answer to the horseman right now. But it depends on what upgrades DeMusliM has on the horseman. He doesn't have the range defense upgrade, but the big question is whether DeMusliM has the Feudal Age horseman upgrade. Because if he doesn't have the Feudal Age horseman upgrade, then the archers actually do quite well against it. Dark Age horsemen aren't particularly good against archers, and we'll soon figure this out, as there is the spearman charging in, but if the archers just focus down the spears, the horsemen and the knights soon arriving for Mista here could once again win a fight for him. Archers focusing down the horsemen for a time being, and it looks like the horseman of Mista just runs past the battle over here, ignoring everybody. Looks like a couple of scouts will be taken down here by the spearman, but here's the deal. The scouts are inexpensive. They're cheap units. You can afford to lose some of your scouts over here, whereas for DeMusliM, he's losing his spearman, he's losing his horseman, and all the spearmen are now gone. Archers are still alive, and now you're seeing Mista appear on the battlefield with a couple of horsemen. He's got some knights queued up as well, and those scouts are acting as a perfect buffer. It's a very cheap unit that also heals up, and most importantly, it's a unit that's going to act as a perfect meat shield in front of your army, especially shielding your archers away from the horsemen, because the spearmen will deal with those scouts quite effectively, but boy oh boy are those scouts effective at shielding those archers away from the horsemen. And now you see the Obu set on fire. Villagers from DeMusliM are being pulled to repair. Military isn't increasing on the battlefield right now for Mista, however, so suddenly he's getting overrun by those horsemen. Archers still trying to focus down the spears as the first knight appears on the battlefield, and that knight is going to be immensely helpful because it can start poking away at those horsemen. And since the spearmen are all gone, it is going to be the horsemen fighting against those knights alone. The Ovu was repaired for the time being, but once again, it is the forces of Mista that are pushing the base of DeMusliM. DeMusliM has a ton of food in the bank right now, so he can continue to make spears. He does have a tiny bit of stone to operate with, and it's going to be spears and the horsemen, a composition that French usually fall to. But Mista currently has the military advantage, and he's using that map control as well to take the hunt, which is a very nice move, spreading out his economy between multiple patches of berries as well, and he's once again getting closer and closer to burning down that Ovu. He has researched professional scouts, and now he's detaching the scouts from his army. Gotta love that. For a long time, he was using those scouts as a combat unit. He was using it as a buffer, a meat shield in front of the archers. Now he's realizing that his opponent is increasing his archer numbers. His opponent has more spears, more horsemen on the battlefield, and he himself has gotten quite a lot of cavalry out. So there is no more point keeping those scouts on the battlefield. Instead, you're just going to use that to ferry in deer for yourself. Nice micro over here by DeMusliM. He's going to be able to finish off most of those archers. Archer number is rather low over here for Mista, and he's losing that last archer on the right side. There is one more on the left that's rather weak. The Khan is going to try and fight that off, but the spearmen are also gone, which means that the knights can once again take a decent fight over here. The Khan is valiantly trying to hold the position, but the Khan is also low HP himself. And both sides are taking significant losses over here, but every once in a while there is a new knight appearing on the battlefield for Mista. 2 or 3 more archers coming in. And the thing is that Mista is having a slightly easier time reinforcing his army, operating with 2 stables and 1 archer range, of course. Meanwhile, on the other side, there's a problem for DeMusliM. Look at his eco. His entire eco is built on those berries, and those berries are about to run out. If those berries run out, Mista will be able to overrun his opponent here with superior forces, simply because DeMusliM will really struggle to get any kind of military on the battlefield. For now, Mista also possesses a 7 villager elite thanks to the fact that he's training villagers faster with the French, and it looks like he's calling it a day for the time being. He's like, okay, I did some damage, I will have to regroup over here, launch another push, and it looks like he's thinking about flanking around with the knights for the time being. Mongols, of course, having the YAM speed network will mean that they can adjust to a raid quite easily, and Mista, once again, just running around, trying to get as many berries, as many hunts for himself as he can. Knights are now ready to jump on those gold miners. There is a defensive tower with arrow slits emplacements on it though, so it's going to be difficult to take down. But Mista is not the person to chicken out. He is committed towards taking that tower, and he's going to try to take this fight. Archers will try to open up against the spearmen, but that's way too many spearmen to deal with right now. Trower trying to take down the archers as we speak, but the knights, they are the beefiest unit on the battlefield, and with the spearmen numbers decreasing over here for DeMusliM, the knights are still alive, and once again, Mista wins a battle here. Of course, Mista isn't wrecking the entire economy of the opponent at this point, but he's able to win battle after battle, and he's starving his opponent out of resources. Look at that. The pastures, they are just working at full capacity with the Ovu boost. However, you still don't have enough sheep here for DeMusliM, and he's running out of wood right now as well. And if you look at the backup wood lines, those are not super safe. There is one over here, one over here. Neither of them are easily accessible at this point. And this is the problem that DeMusliM is facing. Mista is constantly applying pressure at the base of DeMusliM, which means that Mista has map control, and Mista is able to use that to take all the hunts, take all the berries, and because of that, DeMusliM isn't able to move out, and DeMusliM is slowly running out of resources within his own base. Knights running circles around the base of DeMusliM. Once again, that will force DeMusliM to stay back at home, but thanks to the efficiency of the Mongol economy, he's on the way to Castle Age. And this is the problem that the French always face against the Mongols. It's very difficult to stop the Mongols from getting to that good Castle Age timing, but there's a window here for Mista. If you look at the army numbers, it's 27 to 10. If you want to strike, this is the right time to do it for Mista. He probably knows that his opponent is on the way to Castle Age. If not, then he will probably get the notification, well, he will get the notification that his opponent is up to Castle, and at latest, when his opponent gets to Castle, he needs to start pushing this one. Because he needs to know that his opponent just spent dozens of resources on aging up to Castle Age, and this is his time to strike. 31 army versus 11, he has no desire to go into Castle Age, instead he wants to take a fight right now. Archer number is looking pretty decent here for the Mista, should be enough to push away all of those spearmen, and guess what? The step redoubt gets completed, but the gold mine is gonna get pushed, and now if the tower goes down, there's going to be no access to gold for the DeMusliM. And you know what that means? It means that he won't be able to afford a single Castle Age unit. The villagers are making a run for it, evacuating the tower. leaving behind a trail of dead bodies that is 6-7 villagers being taken down. But what's more concerning for DeMusliM is going to be the lack of gold income. This number over here, and there is no backup gold mine. This one is sort of inaccessible, this one is inaccessible, and it doesn't matter that you are in Castle Age if you can't afford a single powerful Castle Age unit. No men-at-arms, no lancers, and this gives a window for Mista to potentially push you with Feudal Age units or just to get to Castle Age himself. You see, DeMusliM will readjust his gold miners to the northern side. Now Mista, with 13 villagers lead, he's ready to push the southern side, and I wonder if he has the siege engineering upgrade. Because if he has it, he could try pushing this angle right now. Archers spread out in line formation, knights committed against the town center. Town center should be able to field all the villagers inside here, but DeMusliM little slow to react, and that is going to be another 6-7 villagers massacred by the knights over here. Look at the amount of dead bodies once again. That is 6 villagers taken down by the knights for basically no retaliation. Not a single unit was lost here by Mista, and once again, we're looking at DeMusliM falling behind more and more in terms of villagers. He's finally getting some lancers on the battlefield thanks to the fact that he has access to that gold mine, but it is a 20 villagers discrepancy between the two players, and it is getting increasingly worrisome for DeMusliM right now, because most of his army is still just spearmen. Spearman thinking about taking this fight over here, but you see DeMusliM pops the speed arrow over here. He's going to call today retreat back into his base. He knows very well that he cannot take this fight right now. He's got the technology advantage, but not the army numbers. He's getting swarmed by the French over here. 16 army for DeMusliM versus 43 for Mista. Mista is going full feudal over here. He's going to try to deny that gold mine. He's setting up his archers in a firing position away from that gold mine, and indeed the villagers will be forced back once again. Lancer numbers slowly increasing over here for DeMusliM, but this is so much as he can do. He will have to take a fight over here, but this is not going to be a spectacular fight for either side, to be honest. Mista's knights are getting decimated by all those spearmen because he wasn't focusing down the spears. On the other side, however, the lancers are gone, and the superior numbers of Mista are just dominating this battle. In the end, while an inefficient fight for both sides, it is going to be won by Mista because he's got way better numbers. And that's a big win for Mista because now he's forcing off his opponent from the gold. And if you look at the bottom part of the map, we do have some blue dots over there as well. So Mista is keeping his eyes out on the other gold mine. He just wants to play this full gold denial game, and right now, DeMusliM isn't able to access any gold, and that is going to have a significant impact on his unit composition because he isn't able to go for those Castle Age power units. Looks like Mista is committed once again. He's charging in with the archers, and the archers will just start picking off all of those villagers making a run for a town center or the tower, but so many of them getting caught off guard once again. They're just not getting back to those defensive positions, the tower, the town center, and DeMusliM is just losing all the villagers at this point. 36 versus 65. Mista going full feudal over here, keeps burning down those towers, and his opponent is just unable to access gold at this point. And with that tower being burned down, you would lose another 3 villagers here for DeMusliM. This is looking extremely grim right now for a red player, and indeed, DeMusliM taps out, he types GG, and he is going to just get his shape back for game number 2. He's gonna have to, because it is a game lead for Mista right now. Game number 1 falling into the hands of DeMista over here, and with that he's going to take the neutral map. Now in terms of drafts, I don't think they were published, so we're a little blind on the drafts over here, but I will try to get those to you, and it actually is now available, so I'll have to add those to the overlay. Looking at the bans, it is going to be a double Delhi ban. So Mista picked French here, despite the fact that he had Mongols available. Mista loves the Mongols on this map, but he was confident in his French, and as I said, the thing is that if you know how to play Mongols against French, you also know how to play French versus Mongols, and Mista did just that. He knew very well that the Mongol player will try to go limited amount of military after the Dark Age pressure and just try to get to Castle Age, and he can capitalize on that by going very aggressive. And the very clever strategy here was to add the scouts, because one thing that the scouts give him is a buffer in front of his archers, and the second thing that it gives him is going to be torch damage. If you have 1 or 2 knights, you can't really threaten the Ovu. But if you have 6-7 scouts, you can burn that Ovu down very fast, which means that you can force a reaction from the Mongol player a lot faster. And part of the reason why this game was so successful for Mista is because he could force a reaction from DeMusliM so early. If he only had 1 or 2 knights or horsemen, DeMusliM can say, okay, I'm going to wait for you to burn it down to like 20% HP and then send some sort of army or villagers to repair it. But because the scouts were there was a lot more pressure on the Ovu, the pastures, and because of that, Mista was able to force the Muslim to react. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 2 in between the Mista and the Muslim. It looks like we're going to have an English versus Abbasid matchup over here on a map that seems to be high view. Currently, we do have the POV of the Muslim over here, if I'm not mistaken. We do have the two scouts meeting in the middle. Spawning on the right side is going to be the Mista playing as the blue English, and on the left side is going to be the Abbasid dynasty of the Muslim in red. Now, looking at the Abbasid pick over here, it's a little surprising, because the Abbasid civilization is usually considered to be, to a certain extent, a counter pick to the French. We have seen that in multiple cases during N4C. However, Mista has used up his French in game number 1, so the Muslim couldn't just counter pick the French over here with the Abbasids. Instead, he just wants to go for Abbasids straight away. Now, Abbasids is a powerful civilization, but I honestly feel like their biggest power is that they are just such a good answer to the French, which is a so common open map civilization pick. But against the English, the Abbasids might have a tough matchup. It's not a horrible matchup, especially given the fact that the Abbasids can play that 2 town center into horseman defense style play against the English, but it is definitely a more difficult matchup for the Abbasids than it is against the French. So English is a decent civilization here for Mista. I don't think that he's playing from a massive civilization advantage, but I do think that he has a slight edge over his opponent, because I do prefer the English over the Abbasids here as the civilization selection. Looks like the Muslim was quite successful collecting sheep. Both players are only operating with 1 scout for the time being, but as you could see for a brief moment, Mista only had 1 sheep trailing his scout, whereas for the Muslim, that seems to be like 6 or 7. It's actually more than that. It's 10 sheep combined with the ones underneath the town center. So quite a lot of sheep to work with for the Muslim. Of course, he's going to focus on the berries, so he's not going to use those sheep immediately. But if he runs out of berries or if he doesn't have map control, those sheep could come in very useful. Looks like he's just going to let them walk back to the town center slowly, detaching them from the scout so he can keep scouting the back of his base. Looking at the bases of the players, the first thing that you always have to evaluate for an Abbasid player is where the stones are, and both of them are on the front, which is a significant problem. Now, in certain matchups, you can easily afford to just mine the stone once you get up to Feudal Age. However, especially against the English that do have a nice Feudal Age timing, and that can get a good push going against those stone mines, you really need to start mining stone as soon as possible in order to be able to get the stone you need for a second town center. Obviously, assuming that you want to go for a second town center. So if the Muslim wants to go for a second TC, he needs to start mining stone ASAP, because he might lose control over the stone mine by the time he's gonna be able to get the 300 stone. So this is one of those scenarios where the Muslim, if he's not mining stone right now, he might not have the window to do it in the next 1.5 minutes. Looks like he's about to start mining stone. The only saving grace for him at this point is that the longbows will take some time to get to the other side of the map. But if you think about it, for 6 villagers to mine 300 stone, when the first couple of longbows will arrive to the battlefield in the next 1 minute or so, this is a little ambitious, I would say, from the Muslim. Against some civilizations, like for example against the opponent's Abbasid civilization, if your opponent is playing Abbasid as well, you can afford this one. Because the thing is that you're not going to get pushed this early. Against a civilization like English, you might not be able to afford it that easily. Now it looks like Mista wasn't really rushing the council hall, so I think the Muslim will get away with this, and Mista is going for his good old-fashioned farming build. This is a classic Mista build, something that very few people use. I saw some people trying to replicate Mista doing this, but this is one of those builds where Mista is playing a very reactive playstyle. This means that he's only going to make as much army as he needs to hold off the enemy, and he's just going to focus on building up that farming eco. But the danger for the enemies here is that Mista can quickly adapt to any situation because he's got the council hall to pop out a lot of longbows from. And in one of the previous sets that he has played, he has used this to his advantage. He basically has shown that he's making no army, he's just farming back at home, piling up the resources, working towards Castle Age, and then he suddenly shows up with like 15-20 longbowmen and spearmen. The Muslim is going to keep track of those longbows closing in on his base, He's currently at 140 stone and he's going to make a defensive tower. That's a nice tower to protect the berries and the stone with. Mista is going to be aware of that, and he also knows that there is going to be a second town center. So at this point, knowing Mista, I would be very surprised to see him going for a lot of attack. He's currently at free army. He sent over 2 longbows just so that he can harass the opponent. But this is only because he wants to make sure that the Muslim can't just comfortably sit inside his base. And the position to strike from for Mista would exactly be the angle that we're looking at right now. This angle. Because, especially with the tower cancelled on that wood line, the lumberjacks could harass that quite effectively, and you might find an angle to hit those stone miners from as well. Currently, the Muslim is at 196 stone, and guess what? Those longbows are coming in to start harassing those villagers. As I said, there are civilizations against which you cannot afford to start mining stone late. And you have the defensive arrow slits coming in right now for the Muslim. If he cancels that, he's gonna be slightly better with the stone count. But he's going to have trouble dealing with those longbowmen. He's going to have to add the stable and then add 1 horseman, which isn't really a huge expense, at least at the first glance. But if you think about the fact that just by making 2 longbows, Mista is forcing his opponent to make a stable, that's huge value. And Mista is just harassing the hell out of the Muslim's eco. Had the Muslim not deleted that tower or cancelled it close to the wood line, this would be an easier defense. Now he's dropping a stable and archer range, but Mista, he's just piling up resources. Now you see he's building up that farming eco with that 4-2-4 farm placement, and he is working towards a second town center potentially. He's got 5 villagers on the stone, and I don't think that he would go for towers and arrow slits and placements on them, so Mista himself will try to play 2 town centers. Now this is the moment where you're going to see production buildings being dropped by the Muslim, and he's going to have to do something with those. He's going to have to do some level of aggression to the opponent's base now, because Mista forced him to make an archer range and a stable just by making 2 longbows. So now, if you were forced to make an archer range and a stable, and you were forced to make a horseman, 1 or 2 archers, you need to do some sort of damage with it. You need to harass the opponent a tiny bit. And there are some resources exposed here for Mista, especially that stone mine. The longbows split up, so you're going to have one of those cleaned up by the horseman, the other one headed north. I don't think this is going to do that much here for Mista. He's probably just using it to scout at this point. And for Mista, he's piling up food right now, 500 food per minute, or excuse me, that's 500 food in the bank, 400 per minute right now for him. Not really mining a ton of gold, so he's far away from Castle Age. And it looks like the Muslim is through the worst. Both players have picked up wheelbarrows, so that's going to boost their economy quite substantially. And look at that, there's a longbowman that preemptively deployed the palings right next to the villagers on the stone mine so that horsemen can't harass them. Mista looks like he wants to play with a second town center as well. And if you look at the villager counts, right now it's dead even. The Muslim hasn't dropped his second town center yet, and it seems like Mista will be able to drop his second town center faster than the Muslim. That's a big win for the English player, especially given the fact that Mista already has a good farming eco set up. So, at this point, you gotta love the build here for Mista, because he won't fall behind in villagers, but he's going to have a spectacular food eco to work with. Of course, the Abbasid player, especially if he's not getting pushed by the longbows, could just spread out and go for the berries. The berries are very gracious right now for the Muslim. He's got 1 over here, 1 over here. 2 berry patches, very well defendable. The map gods have been very gracious with the Muslim right now. He's, by the way, playing in a Team Liquid jersey, that's no mistake. Team Liquid just picked up the Muslim. This is the first transfer for Team Liquid in Age of Empires 4. It is the first player on the Age of Empires 4 roster of Team Liquid. You gotta wonder if there are going to be more additions, but it is definitely a welcome addition here, because one of the largest and most prestigious esports organizations in the world picking up one of the most reputable Age of Empires players, one of the most lovable Age of Empires players, is a great sight to see. Mista once again dropping the second mill over here, once again 4-2 farm placement, which is slightly more effective. If you place your farms like that, you're going to have 10 farms affected by the mill, whereas if you just surround your mill with farms and place it in that influence radius, just by spam clicking potentially on the mill, or you just surround it by default, then you're going to have just 8 farms in that influence radius. So that 4-2-4 placement is actually slightly more effective, because you can affect 2 additional farms, and it looks like the Muslim isn't stopping here. He's dropping a 3rd town center. And that's going to make things very interesting here, because Mista will actually fall behind in villagers. Now, one thing that Mista does not know about is that 3rd town center. He knows that there is at least 1 more for the Muslim, but he doesn't know it's actually 2 more. So that's going to make things interesting here. Mista is scouting around, so he will soon spot that third town center, and that's going to help quite a lot for him to react to that. Now, this is a risky scenario because free town centers is not something that you commonly see from Abbasids when they are playing against other civilizations. In Abbasid mirrors, you do see free town centers because one player is trying to gain an advantage over the other. So one is building free just to make sure that he's going to have a villager advantage over the other player who only has two. However, dropping a third town center will delay your castle age to a certain extent, so that's a little risky. It looks like it's not going to be a massive delay though, because DeMusliM is also piling up the resources for castle age. Very nicely balanced eco for him, and of course, Mista had to invest into the farming eco, so that's the other reason why the two players are clicking up to castle age at approximately the same time. Three town centers right now for DeMusliM, 46 villagers for him. He's trying to get some damage done on the eco of the DeMista, and it looks like the first villager casualty of the game will happen here, or not. Villagers will be protected by those longbowmen for a time being. Mista playing on two town centers, and he's going to drop a stable behind. Knowing Mista, this won't be just one stable. This will be two or three potentially. He's got the back of his base walled off. Initially, he planned to wall off the right side, over here. But I assume he saw the horseman coming, so he couldn't finish those walls, and decided to just make the wall over here. Looks like some blue forces are marching across the map over here. DeMusliM didn't commit a lot of resources into making armies, so those longbows could definitely find some value for themselves. Mista now establishing that great food eco. Currently, the food income per minute is better for DeMusliM. It's about 1,000, 1,100 for DeMusliM, whereas for DeMista, it's only 700, 800. But of course, this is going to be much more sustainable for Mista, because he already has the farming setup, whereas for DeMusliM, he's mostly relying on berries. Longbows will find an engagement over here against the horsemen. Horsemen should have no trouble dealing with them, but the longbows might be able to take one of the horsemen down. DeMusliM is going to have to micro those carefully. Looks like the horseman is going to get picked off. The second horseman might actually get taken down over here with some good micro here by Mista. And indeed, he's spreading out his longbows. He wants to make sure that that horseman has to walk, or more like gallop, as much as possible to reach those longbows, and he will be able to take down the second horseman. For a fight where he was up against cavalry with just longbows, that was actually a pretty decent fight. He's up to castle age, and he's got the veteran longbows already in. Tower in the middle is going to be a great point to give him extra vision, and it's also going to be a great point to provide the network of castles bonus for him. Seems like we're going to have mass infantry and lancers over here for the DeMusliM. He isn't messing around. Look at that. 3 barracks, archery range, stable. He's about to flood out every kind of unit that's humanly possible. Meanwhile, for Mista, it looks like we're seeing some longbows being added, some horsemen being added. It's not even going to be knights, just longbow horsemen. Interesting concept, because he doesn't have anything against men-at-arms, so it's a little risky. We'll have to see what exactly he has on his mind. For now, he's just going to garrison the tower in the middle. There is also a Springald emplacement coming up for that tower. He's got a great farming eco, and if he can wall off the northern side as well, it's going to be well protected too. Currently, food ecos are getting closer and closer, and as you see, Mista has vision on those berries. DeMusliM is running out of the second patch of berries, and this is what Mista has to play for. Mista has to realize that DeMusliM currently has a great food eco because he's relying on the berries. Whereas for Mista, he's set up for the entire game with that food eco. These walls still unfinished, as we discussed. Those would be helpful because you would get some stone, you would get some berries with it. Although for Mista, he really doesn't want to take those berries. And it looks like it's just that one scout attacking the villagers. This is not intentional by Mista. He just didn't have the scout on stand ground, and the scout automatically attacked the villagers. That's a bit of a blunder, I would say. Because if you think about it, now Mista has shown that he knows about that berry patch, so the DeMusliM might send a couple of spearmen over there to defend against a potential cavalry raid. Looks like Phalanx is coming in for the spears of the DeMusliM, both players with very, very calm heart rates at this point, 57 and 69. Mista's heart rate is beautiful, very nice. Looks like it's a fortified tower in the middle. That's going to be a great staging ground for an assault, and it looks like Mista will try to play food denial. He's towering hunts, and if he towers the other hunt over here as well, which is a realistic possibility, then we could easily see him trying to starve his opponent out of food. And if you think about it, once the berries are gone, the DeMusliM would have to switch to a bunch of farms, and that's going to take a lot of time and resources. Mista housed a tiny bit over here. You can see at the bottom left that he's 100 out of 100, so he's gonna have to make a couple of houses, and he's spreading out all across the map, dropping towers left and right. So he just sort of wants to pin his opponent inside his base, make sure that he isn't able to access relics, make sure he isn't able to access berries, hunts, and it's all about starving the opponent out of resources. And especially if he fortifies those outposts, it's going to be difficult for the opponent to take those down. It will take a lot of effort take those down. DeMusliM, seeing the opponent's forces in the middle, he's going to call off his. He's got crazy numbers, however. Look at that army. That's about 15 men-at-arms. I would count at least 10 spearmen, some crossbows, some lancers over there. Very diverse unit composition as well. Whereas for Mista, his army numbers aren't looking that great. It's only 28. Down south, we are seeing some walls come up for Mista, so he's trying to wall off that corner. I wonder what exactly the motivation is behind that. I would be very surprised if he was trying to deny that market from the opponent, but it's not impossible. Still, that's a little bit of a weird wall at the bottom over there for Mista. Other than that, he's dropping towers left and right, but here comes DeMusliM. He's coming out with his own army here, and currently, Mista doesn't have the forces to match that. We're seeing some more horsemen and longbows added, but I told you before, I don't think that Mista has an answer to those men-at-arms right now. Fortified tower is going to be a nice foothold over here for Mista to try and fight this one, but he's realizing indeed that he has absolutely no armor-piercing units. The Lancers and the men-at-arms will be able to get rid of those forces. I think it's 3 longbows garrisoned inside that tower, so those will all be taken down here. It's going to take an effort to take down that tower right now, because it is a fortified tower, but slowly but surely it is being burned down. But look at that counterattack over there by Mista. He used an overchop that was created by DeMusliM recently, and DeMusliM was a little slow to react to this one. He just now realized that horsemen are in his eco. It looks like Mista just wanted to distract his opponent, pull his forces out of his base, and then go in for the raid. It's only horsemen, so it's not going to do as much damage as knights could, and it looks like the crossbows, the spearmen, the man-at-arms are slowly cleaning it up. This looked a lot scarier than what it actually became, because in the end I think DeMusliM lost like 1 or 2 villagers. Villager count dead even between the 2 players, but as I said, DeMusliM to a certain extent is on a timer, because once he runs out of berries, he's gonna have basically no food income. So this is a push that he has to make. If Mista is able to hold this one, we could be in for a long game, because DeMusliM won't be able to rebuild his forces fast enough. Mista currently sitting at 36 army, he's massing longbows, he's massing horsemen, but you still gotta wonder how is he going to deal with all of those men-at-arms at this point. He probably will need to use the horsemen to snipe the mangonels, because otherwise the mangonels will just level his entire army of longbows. But no crossbowmen for him, no siege weapons himself. And I do see another stable being added. There are some archery ranges as well, so crossbows are an option. But if you look at Mista, he's just making horsemen and longbows. For whatever reason, he's confident with this unit composition, and I'm not exactly convinced about this one. DeMusliM is currently at 200 population, 89 army, whereas for Mista, it's only 144. So Mista is falling behind quite a bit in the military department. It's 2-1 now on the military numbers, and that's going to be a lot of mangonels. Maybe, just maybe, Mista went a little too eco-heavy here, and now he's paying the price because he doesn't have the army to fight this one. Although Mista seems very calm. Look at that, 55 heartbeat. The thing is that I think Mista is expecting to be outnumbered over here. I know it sounds weird, but Mista seems to have a plan over here. He's charging in with the cavalry, trying to intercept the crossbows and the villagers coming through, forward castle being dropped by DeMusliM. And as I said, based on that heart rate and based on the fact that I don't see Mista scrambling for crossbows or anything, I think Mista has a plan. Mista seems to be confident with the situation, which is crazy. 45 heart rate. 44. On YouTube comments, someone said that 40 to 50 is actually a possibility for trained athletes. Not gonna lie, I hope it doesn't fall lower than that, because that actually endangers the life of Mista. He couldn't be calmer than this. Here comes the cavalry counterattack on the left side, and once again that overchopped wood line could be the demise of DeMusliM, and it looks like the Mista is trying to stall this push out and launch a counterattack with the horsemen, but those horsemen won't be able to get a lot of results for themselves, and those horsemen might be much needed on the battlefield right now, because I don't know how Mista is stopping this. He felt really confident with this defense. He didn't waver, but it really doesn't feel like he has an answer. to those units right now inside his base. The horsemen will find some villagers, that's for sure, and the longbows will be able to hold off the spears, but how do you stop the men-at-arms? How do you stop the mangonels? That's the main question over here. Mista getting some good raids going, but minimal casualties inflicted on the Muslim side. The Muslim has textiles, and those horsemen aren't really doing a ton of damage, whereas on the other side, the King's Pass is being taken down. I think Mista needs those cavalry back on the battlefield to try and snipe siege weapons. Mista still going horsemen and longbows. He seems to be very stubborn, sticking with this unit composition. Now, he doesn't have a castle, so he doesn't have the network of citadels bonus either, but I'm really curious to see what exactly he's thinking, because he seems to be just stuck with this unit composition with no desire to change up his plans. He keeps raiding the Muslim, which definitely hurts the eco of our red player right now, but Mista is yet to clean up this force inside his base, and this army is just growing and growing. Now, some of this army is spearmen and crossbows, which means that the longbows will be able to take them down, but there is at least about 15 to 20 men-at-arms, and those are the problems to deal with for the Muslim. Here comes the cavalry, however, forward castle attempted by the Muslim here, and once again the cavalry will try to jump on those mangonels. The mangonel gets taken down. That's the only mangonel out there, and now the Mista, even though he's eating a big shot with his longbows from that mangonel, he's ready to take this fight over here, trying to focus down the villager. There's a second mangonel hiding underneath the castle, however, not something that can be easily seen. Maybe Mista didn't even see it. He's going to decimate the ranks of those spearmen, but the men-at-arms are just soaking up so much arrow fire. More horsemen coming in here to take this fight. Another mangonel has been built recently. One mangonel goes down. There is a last one underneath the castle, but it's a little difficult to click here for Mista, most likely. Meanwhile, Mista continues his raids, and he's still holding on to 30-ish army numbers. On the other side, the Muslims steadily at 70, but the villager numbers are gone. The longbows were focusing down the villagers, and you see the result. The castle has been stopped. Mista lost a tremendous amount of units over here. He lost all his cavalry trying to snipe the siege, but the villagers were also taken down. Of course, the castle is near completed, so the Muslim could easily pull some more villagers to finish it, and indeed, there are the villagers. The castle will be finished. Mista, however, also rushing up his own keep over here, and that is a beautiful mangonel shot. Look at that. That is just going to wipe out 15-20 villagers from Mista over here, trying to get that castle up. The second volley comes out, damages a lot of villagers, kills another few. The castle goes up, but what's the cost of that? The Mista just lost like 20 villagers out there. The healing ability of the castles is right there for the Abbasid player already. A third castle is being placed on the front here by the Muslim. Mista, what is he going to do against this one? Trebuchets could work, and indeed he's grabbing the first trebuchet already. He's going to start shelling that keep in the middle. Mista still feels so confident, and this is to me unbelievable. 58 heart rate when you have 3 castles in front of your base and you have longbows against 3 mangonels is absolutely inhuman. The trebuchet is shelling the castle in the middle right now. You gotta doubt that castle even going up at this point. And Mista has been quite active raiding, but you see no decline in the villager count of the Muslim. As I said, those villagers are quite sturdy, so those horsemen weren't really doing that much of a damage. If Mista were using knights, that would be a completely different story. Springolds are rolling up over here. You gotta be careful with your Springolds at this point. They're diving in to snipe the trebuchet, and it looks like Mista isn't reacting, which means that the trebuchet gets taken care of. The spearmen and the men-at-arms got some casualties underneath the town center, and look at that, that's a castle in the middle. Mista isn't able to access wood, I'm just now realizing, because he has to fight for that wood line up front. He's going to have a castle in the middle, however, and that's going to cut off reinforcements. A castle in the north is built as well. That's going to be a rather close one for the Muslim. The archers and the horsemen are charging in on that castle position. Not exactly sure why we're not watching that right now. I'm not the one observing, but it looks like that castle should go up. Based on that completion percentage, I would have thought it goes up, but I'm not exactly sure now. I'm really unsure. We'll have to take a look at that castle position over there. Mangonels are still shelling the TC here for Mista, and repairing... Oh, castle was stubbed. That castle is stubbed. What's the completion percentage? It's like 99%. What a shame that we missed that. That was like 98% completion, and then the horseman and the longbow stubbed it, and now... If Mista is just doing some damage to it, even if the Muslim deletes it, the Muslim won't get a full refund. So that's a big win over there for Mista stopping that keep. And now, I feel like Mista is just stalling out this push. He's sitting behind that town center, and he just wants to launch a counterattack. I think his longbows are heading straight to the base of the opponent. The Muslim trying another castle in front of his base this time around. Longbows are getting closer, horsemen trying to wipe out those villagers. This castle is going up, protecting the lumberjacks. Crazy game going on over here at this point. Castles left and right, and I see an Imperial Age come in. Whose POV are we on? Are we on Mista's POV? That's the question. That's a little difficult to tell when you don't have the scores on. But that is... I think that might be Mista's POV. Is that a Berkshire Palace being built? Yes. Nope. It is a Wingard Palace. A Wingard Palace that we have seen today already. It is going to be a great way to get access to trebuchets for a very low cost. You could have justified the Berkshire Palace in this defensive position, but the Wingard Palace is also going to work out because you can get trebuchets out very easily. The town center is constantly being repaired by Mista, but he's very low on wood. That's his biggest problem right now. He's struggling to access wood, and if you look at the ecos, it's way better right now for the Muslim. It's not getting pushed at all. Mista has villagers spread all across the map over here. The Muslim is trying to push him, and the Mista is just acting like a sponge. He gets punched in the middle and he's expanding to the sides. That's exactly what's happening. Villagers located all across the map here. Villagers here, 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 and here. Everywhere we look, Mista is expanding outwards with his villagers because he knows very well that his own base is actually probably the least safe place on the entire map. Now the longbows are opening up against the villagers on the left side, and this could be massive. For a long time, the Muslim didn't suffer from any villager losses, and if those longbows find those lumberjacks, this could be disastrous. So we'll have to keep track of this number, the villager count, and the wood income as well. Looks like the council hall is getting taken care of, as the men-at-arms will find the longbows. So far the longbows weren't really able to get any villager kills. Siege still increasing in numbers over here for the Muslim. Mista at 126 population, the Muslim at 200 still. I feel like Mista is just trying to hang on to a game that just seems lost. For a long time I thought he has a plan, but I honestly feel like he was just trying to do his best here with the horsemen and the longbows, knowing that the situation is very difficult. So now it's looking very, very grim. He's dropping another castle. His only way of getting back into this game is if the game goes very long. And he's going to be able to capitalize on those Wingard Palace cheap trebuchets. Because if he gets that, he can start taking down these keeps over here. He's going to lose his own keep, and you have to keep track of the landmarks now. He did lose his Tower Center, he lost the Council Hall, he lost the King's Palace. So the only landmark still standing is the Wingard Palace up north for Mista. But that's at a quite well defendable position, especially if Mista starts wiping out all of those castles out there. Quite a lot of mangonels here for the Muslim. This is a next to impossible unit composition to deal with right now for Mista. So I'm not exactly sure what he can do even. 27 army against 95. Whenever I'm watching Mista, I'm always impressed about his unique strategies. And every time I'm watching Mista, I always get the feel that he has something in store for us. Something cheesy, something surprising, something that nobody expected, including the enemy. But this time around, I don't think that's the case. I simply think that he's just getting massacred right now. He's trying to hang on to the game, hoping that he can somehow turn this around, but I don't think there's a chance anymore. I mean, he has no tools of defending his own economy. He's got absolutely no gold income. He's mining stone like a madman. He's got 1,600 stone in the bank right now. But what is he going to do with it? I have no idea. He's got some cavalry in the opponent's base, finally. But at this point, the Muslim also has a decent resource bank, so if he loses some villagers, those will just be replaced with army. And there is no tools right now for Mista to stop that group of mangonels and springolds. And his entire base is getting leveled. Mista, once again, just like the jelly, getting punched in the middle, expanding to the sides. He's basically abandoning his starting base at this point. But we're not seeing him getting closer to victory by any means. At least, he's just so far away at this point. What is he going to do? He's at 33 army. If he had some knights, like let's say 15-20 knights that could run into the opponent's eco, I would maybe believe. Because the knights would do a lot of damage and you could start killing villagers and maybe somehow grind down the opponent's army. But horsemen won't be that great for raiding when you only have like 6 or 7 of them raiding. You see, they take so much time to kill those villagers, and the Muslim is barely losing eco. He's still at 105. He was at like 115 3 minutes ago. The Muslim is barely losing economy. Whereas for Mista, he's really struggling to get any kind of raiding damage going. Still, the Wingard Palace stands, and that gives some sort of breathing room for Mista. And wait a minute, that's why Mista was still sticking with this game. I'm just now realizing the Muslim wasn't an Imperial. Mista was trying to somehow salvage this game by using his technology advantage, because he is still Imperial Age versus a Castle Age opponent. He's fortifying his defensive position over here. He's knowing that the Wingard Palace will be under attack. He's getting some trebuchets going. He's going to try and shell the castle in front of the Muslims' base. I feel like the plan now is getting clearer and clearer for the Mista. He wants to take this castle down over here and then just spearhead into the opponent's base. He's going to play the who dies faster game. He's going to have a bombardment placement on that keep that's going to force back the mangonels temporarily. And the thing is that if he can somehow stall this push out, he might have a small window to try and snipe the landmarks. You only have to snipe the starting TC and the House of Wisdom, but the House of Wisdom is a very sturdy building, so it's going to take a lot of firepower to take it down, and the Muslim has a lot of units back at home as well, but you see, that's the plan. Mista is completely abandoning his home base, just defending with keeps and bombardment placements on them, and he just wants to snipe down the opponent's landmarks at this point. He just wants to spearhead into the opponent's base. He gives up on his own, tries to push the opponent. It's a desperate effort. This is not something that you would do if you were ahead, not even if you were even with the opponent. It's something that you only do when you're so much behind that you have no other choice. And the reason why he's trying to do this is because he's still hoping that his Imperial Age advantage will give him some sort of edge. Now that the Muslim is in Imperial, that could change things up, but this is a great raid coming in. And keep in mind that the Muslim doesn't have a tremendous amount of map control because his army is rather slow moving. So if Mista is somehow able to slow this push down within his base, the Muslim could be in trouble, because villagers are now being lost on the gold mines, and you have to keep in mind that, as I said, the Muslim is pinned inside his own base. If you look at his villager distribution, all of the villagers are in this circle, except for these that are currently being massacred by horsemen. Which means that the Muslim could have serious issues accessing resources. And if you look at Mista's is spread out all across the map. He's got safe resource income. He had to abandon his farming eco to a certain extent, but at least he's able to access wood and gold. This is getting more and more intriguing, I believe, because the Muslim's eco is getting picked apart. In just a blink of an eye, he's down to 81 villagers. Now, he's got a fairly substantial amount of resources in his resource bank, so he can probably just replace the villagers with army for the time being. But this is getting worse and worse for the Muslim, and you see something that you did not expect to see. He's calling off his forces from the base of Mista, because he's realizing that, oh shoot, Mista is willing to surrender his own base in order to try and push mine, and that's exactly what's happening. The trebuchets are taking down that keep, and I do believe that the Muslim is going to have serious issues accessing wood. If you look at the forests available, there's nothing on the south, nothing even in the middle. These are the forests that the Muslim can work with, and all of those are now being harassed or pressured by the Mista. He's also coming in with the horseman. If Mista wins this one, that's going to be a heartbreaker for the Muslim, because he was spearheading his way into the base of Mista, and now you're seeing Mista crawling back into this. His population is still looking quite disastrous. He lost 3 out of the 4 landmarks. Now he's setting up some trebuchets to take down those castles with. And since the Muslim is busy doing something else, like for example pushing the middle and trying to regroup, he could lose those castles inside the base of Mista. And I think Mista is shelling the starting town center, right? Those trebuchets are setting up. Indeed, they're shelling the House of Wisdom right now. Oh, this is getting worse and worse for the Muslim right now. He's trying to push those keeps. Looks like one of those keeps will go down here. Mista might need to pull some forces to try and burn down the rams. He won't be able to deal with the mangonels, but the rams should be taken care of. It's going to take a lot of time to take down the House of Wisdom because it has like 17,000 HP, so while it only counts as one landmark, it actually has a lot of HP, so it's going to take a lot of time. If Mista had 1 or 2 bombars, that would help immensely, because bombars do a lot more damage. Trebs outrange every other unit, basically, but the bombars would do so much more damage. If Mista had 1 bombard, this push would be a lot more dangerous. He's repairing that keep as long as possible, and remember that keep has quite a lot of firepower. It's taking down so many mangonels, and with those mangonels being taken down, the military power of the Muslim, to a certain extent, is disappearing. He still has quite a lot of forces, so he's not really in a tough spot, to be honest. He's got some men-at-arms inside the base of the opponent, still some mangonels, still large amount of spearmen and elite men-at-arms as well. I think he also has some hand cannoneers or crossbows in that group. But the Mista, his plan is clear now. He wants to push into the opponent's base, and he's got the trebuchets for that. It's unbelievable to see Mista holding on to this one, being behind by 70 population. For the last 3 or 4 minutes, actually more than that, probably even 6, 7, 8, the Muslim had 200 population over 130 from Mista. Mista's eco is an absolute train wreck. But somehow he's holding on to this one. There is going to be a castle being placed over here by the Muslim. He knows very well that Mista has 1 shot, and that's pushing this side. And one thing that Mista could do is try to clean up the forces inside his base, sort of using this attack as a decoy, and just try to drag this game out to be longer, because if he cleans up those forces inside his base, he can sort of reclaim his farming eco, he can get his landmarks back on track, but those keeps are still standing strong, and there is no trebuchet right now for Mista to take them down. Mista is setting up the trebuchets to start shelling that castle out there. With 4 traps shelling the castle, that won't stand for long. Obviously, the healing effect of the castle is going to be quite helpful as well for the Muslim. He's got quite a lot of stones, so he could drop another castle elsewhere. Looks like the initial starting base for Mista is completely gone. It feels like he's just playing Mongols, relocating his entire base at this point. Looks like the Springolds are opening up against, well, a lumber camp. That's going to be quite underwhelming. The trebuchets had to be pulled back, and I think the castle wasn't taken down, so even though it was on fire, the DeMusliM will be able to repair this one. Military number 67 to 102. Another castle is being built as we speak, and I do see elite archers being mixed into the group as well. Now, DeMista is struggling quite a bit when it comes to army numbers, but he's got a lot of trebuchets, and those do have the area effect. They're actually shelling the springolds out there, something that the DeMusliM did not notice, and slowly but surely, Mista is building up his army. That's an unbelievable performance over here for him. The DeMusliM is doing all the right things, but Mista is somehow hanging on to this game. I still believe that Mista's chances are lower than 1%. I mean, he was housed for a long time because he's losing his houses at the starting base. His gold miners up north are getting slaughtered. And the more you see the DeMusliM, the more you're seeing him sort of regaining that map control. He has given up on his push inside the base of Mista. Oop, that was a dog for a brief moment. That's, I think, Grubby's dog being there at the LAN. Interesting doggo cam for just a split second out there. But anyways, the key moments of the battle coming in the middle. Once again, the keep is getting taken down. But this is not something that the DeMusliM has to be worried about at this point. Simply because it takes so much firepower to get rid of that House of Wisdom and the starting town center that he has a lot of time to react to it. Mista is now down to 64 villagers. Mista is hoping in something. And he's got a quite decent military population. But this is just a dream, I think, for Mista. If he pulls off a win here, that's going to be an absolute heartbreaker for the DeMusliM. And if he pulls off a win over here, that's going to be the most unlikely win I've ever seen in Age of Empires 4. His population is still a train wreck, his starting base is gone, he's hanging on to just one landmark, keep that in mind, that's the Wingard Palace. He doesn't have relics, he doesn't have sacred sites, he doesn't have a larger army, his population is just bad. Hand cannoneers are being added, and those are very population effective, and as long as you have a meat shield in front, they will deal well with all that infantry. Longbow is also doing quite a decent job over here, but quite a lot of cavalry will be sacrificed in this battle, and every unit that is lost is going to be a pain to replace for Mista, and will be rather easy to replace for the DeMusliM. You see, the DeMusliM's resource bank is still looking quite healthy. Hand cannoneers constantly retreating over here, trying to get some more shots on those men-at-arms. Once again, Mista is retreating down to 120 population. He's shelling that keep in the middle, but his opponent has a much easier time rebuilding the army. I will be very disappointed if this game is going to be called by Mista after like 40 minutes, and we basically saw him having limited amount of chances beyond the 15-20 minute mark, to be honest. Because ever since that push happened to his base, he didn't seem to be able to recover from it. This being said, he's got these shattering projectiles on those trebuchets, and those do area damage. Those are still scary. The DeMusliM did lose some of his numbers as well, but now he's starting to raid the opponent's food eco. And the problem for Mista right now is that he isn't able to gather resources. He's at 57 villagers, and his villager count is dropping. I'm not even sure if he has a town center, actually. In fact, I'm fairly certain he doesn't. What is Mista hoping in? What is Mista hoping in? That's my question. Is he hoping that he can somehow starve his opponent out of all resources? Or is he hoping that he will find an opening where he can take down the House of Wisdom and the starting town center? I don't know. But Mista is at 100 population, his opponent is steadily at 200, and as I said, even if the DeMusliM lost 60-70 villagers right now, it wouldn't matter because he's got an enormous resource bank. Now, the DeMusliM is going to spot the Wingard Palace, which means that now he knows where he needs to push. He knows that that's the last landmark that he has to get rid of, and since there are still 2 castles in the initial base of Mista, it's going to be impossible for Mista to repair his initial landmarks. It looks like it's going to be just mass hand cannoneers with trebuchets, and it is looking like we're going to have a big battle unfolding over here. A bombard is being added as well by our red player, the DeMusliM. Meanwhile, on the other side, still more trebuchets coming out in the form of the Wingard army. They're going to start shelling those buildings out there. They are dangerous with their shattering projectiles. That's not an upgrade that should be underestimated. But you also have to consider that the springolds can deal with the trebuchets quite effectively. And the fact that the DeMuslim's army is still quite big. In fact, the DeMuslim should start thinking about deleting some villagers and replacing them with army. With 124 villagers, with 8,000, 9,000 food, and 3,000 gold at the bank feels a little too excessive, potentially. Nice counterattack by the DeMuslim. He's waiting for his opponent to push in the middle, and while Mista is distracted, he's going to send in the archers to the back of Mista's base. Mista has no operational economy. If the DeMuslim holds off this push, the Mista is out of the game because he won't be able to replace that army. Mista has no gold income. Here comes the trebuchets, however, and that could be a volley. That could be devastating. Rocks falling on top of the infantry, but they missed the target. And now the infantry is going to try jumping on all of those trebuchets. Archers are picking off the villagers for Mista. And I think DeMusliM has this game here. Mista tried to hold on until the last minute here, really. And I wonder if those trebuchets even have shattering projectiles now. I initially thought that Mista has gotten it, but I'm not so sure anymore, because those should be doing a lot more damage to the infantry. With shattering projectiles, they would actually have area damage, and you barely see any kind of area damage having shown on that battlefield. Oh, Mista, he's at 76 army right now. Is there any way? I don't think so. I think Mista is trying to win a game in which he has like 0.00001% win rate or win chance. What is he hoping in? I don't know. Both players are Imperial, and I think DeMusliM at this point is doing the right thing. He's just defending. He knows very well that his opponent has one shot, and that is a direct push into his base. Maybe Mista is waiting for his opponent. Maybe Mista is saying, okay, what if DeMusliM just becomes a little too greedy, tries to go for the Wingard Palace, and as he's pushing my base, I'll push his. He's also methodically pushing forward, and he's crawling closer with those traps. Starting TC could be taken down, and honestly, the jackpot would be to take down the houses for Mista at the beginning. Takes down a couple of houses, that would mean that DeMusliM is housed, which makes it a little more difficult to replenish his army. Now, DeMusliM is setting up some stables, but he's gotta be careful, because the starting TC was taken down, now the Hostile Wisdom is under fire, and suddenly, DeMusliM has to take this fight. Starting TC being repaired as we speak, but if this fight is not won by Mista, he's out of the game, but that House of Wisdom is being attacked right now, infantry swarming the trebuchets. Look at the amount of trebuchets, however, House of Wisdom down to about 40% HP, but the amount of trebuchets is unbelievable. The House of Wisdom is on fire. Can Mista do this? Can Mista pull off the most unbelievable win out here? The town center is not repaired yet. House of Wisdom at 10% HP, 5%, still 4 trebuchets out, and that is going to be the next volley coming in. There is no more volleys coming from those trebuchets. There is the next volley. DeMusliM is out. And Mista, look at that face! Unbelievable. That's absolutely unbelievable. That is the craziest victory I've ever seen. Mista is just sitting there like saying, oh shoot, I cannot believe this. He's screaming out of happiness because he won a game that was impossible to win. He was waiting so much for the trebuchets, and the trebuchets don't have a ton of damage output. DeMusliM did the right thing. He waited for his opponent to push. I don't think DeMusliM believed that DeMista has so many trebs, and that's the power of the Wingard Palace. There was at least 10-15 trebuchets out there. That would be thousands of resources if you would have to build it from the Siege Workshop. It's only a couple hundred if you build it from the Wingard Palace. The patience paid off for Mista, and he pulls off the most unbelievable victory I've ever seen. An absolute heartbreaker for DeMusliM. DeMusliM was winning this game. The entire game, DeMusliM was pretty much leading in here. Mista's chances were next to non-existent, yet he pulls off a victory here. And now, DeMusliM is in a very difficult position because he's down 2-0. And what's more problematic than this is the fact that he lost a game that should have never been lost. It's a game where Mista pulled off one of the most unbelievable victories ever. And the key thing here is that Mista, if he loses this game, he's just going to be like, okay, whatever, I lost. But now that he won it, he's fired up, he's ready to go. He's probably as motivated as ever. Whereas for DeMusliM, this is a shattering defeat, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him standing up for a couple of minutes and just saying, okay, I need to clear my head, because this is a game that shouldn't have been lost. I think you have just seen Age of Empires history, because that game was the most unbelievable game I've ever seen. Welcome back to DeMista versus DeMusliM after an absolute craziness at the ending of the last game. Now Mista is up 2-0 versus DeMusliM. You do have DeMista playing as the blue Holy Roman Empire to the southern part of the map, and up north you're going to see DeMusliM playing as the Rus in red, and the map is going to be Hill and Dale if I'm not mistaken, looking at the layout of the map. Once we see the entire map on the minimap, we will be clearer. But it seems like it is going to be Hill and Dale. And this is a map where the Holy Roman Empire is a sort of expected meta-style pick. Whereas on the other side, you do have the Rus, which is definitely an off-meta pick for this map. We have seen one Rus being utilized. I think it was day number 2 when we saw one Rus, but I don't remember who did that. But I don't remember it working out well, because The idea with the Rus here, or at least in that game, the idea with the Rus was that you just basically try to go for a semi-fast castle approach using the Golden Gate, trying to beat the Holy Roman Empire to castle, and then just trying to pick up the relics using the warrior monks. Of course, the warrior monks carry the relics rather slow backwards, but you can pick them up quite fast, because the idea is that you can get to those relics really easily, and your warrior monks can even take down the opponent's prelates if needed. Now, of course, having a Rus on the battlefield means that we are going to have fighting going on for the predators and of course the deer all across the map, as the Rus player is trying to raise his bounty level, and you see we're going to have a bit of a scout dancing over here. Whenever the Muslim shoots a deer, Mista is going to have to shoot it after that, and this way the Muslim won't be able to get the bounty. You see a bit of a scout dancing over here because the Muslim is trying to isolate a deer that he can shoot twice before Mista would be able to do anything about it. And indeed, that's going to be the story. Running left and right, hoping to isolate a deer. Now, Mista is sending his scout to the right side, which means that he's going to be able to just one-shot all deer. And it looks like the Muslim finally gets one deer for himself here. Now, one thing to point out, as I said in the set before, is that the Mista usually plays with one scout. Exception is only when he is playing against the Rus over here, because he wants to make sure that he's minimizing the amount of predators or hunt that the opponent is able to kill, and this way minimizing the amount of bounty that the Rus player is able to grab. Now, the second scout is still missing from action over here for Mista. Looks like he turned around, and he's just going to let his opponent take down another deer over here. And with that scout not being over here, it means that the Muslim should be able to win this fight. The scout is higher HP, and it looks like indeed there is no scout to be found over here for Mista. Currently 220 bounty for the Muslim. He's going to have no problem getting to 250. And it looks like indeed there is going to be no help coming for this scout here for the Mista. He's going to lose that final deer as well. 265 for our red player over here is quite a decent amount of bounty. And this blue scout is just a little late to the party over here for Mista. It could have helped so much to get that scout out there a little faster. But I guess he was busy collecting sheep or potentially taking down another patch of hunt or looking for wolves. So don't really blame Mista for that. Meanwhile, it looks like we're going to have most of the predators and the deer already cleaned up. Golden Gate on the way for the Muslim. Whereas on the other side for Mista, he's on the way to Feudal Age. His resource bank isn't looking spectacular right now. He's likely going up with the Aachen Chapel. You can already see that on the minimap. Now, he's going to place his Aachen Chapel in a way that it's going to affect the gold miners, I believe. That's the Aachen Chapel, that little thing over there. Indeed, there it is. And it's going to affect the gold miners. I wonder if it actually affects the lumberjacks, because it's kind of far away from the trees. So we'll have to see if it actually affects it. And the answer is not really. It's going to affect the gold miners, but the lumberjacks are just missing out on this one. Not necessarily ideal, and as I said in a set before, it's a little bit of a different mindset. Some players have the mindset of having the Aachen Chapel affect the food and wood villagers, whereas others will try to squeeze in the gold into it. If you can affect all three, that's perfect, but if you have to choose between two, some players choose the wood, some players choose the gold. Now, for a slightly faster castle age, it's actually better to choose the gold, because of course you will need gold to get to castle. But in the long run, it's probably better to choose the wood, because of course once you get to castle age and get the relics in, you're going to have the Ragni's Cathedral as your primary gold source anyways, so it's not like you'll be mining a ton of gold. Looks like a villager is being pulled here by the Muslim, and I'm expecting him to try and potentially either wall in the relics themselves, or try to wall in the opponent. Keep in mind, being the Rus means that he's going to have fortified palisade walls, and he has the option to go for a couple of knights as well to escort those villagers with, and it looks like he's trying to wall in the opponent right now. There is one relic on the hill of Mista, by the way, so that's going to be guaranteed for him, or it would be a massive surprise, so to say, to see the Muslim being able to yoink that away from him. Palisades in the middle coming in, and that's one of the advantages of having the Rus here. Instead of standard palisades, you have fortified palisades, which means that these take a lot more punishment before going down. And it's all about delaying the HRA player as much as possible from picking up those relics. So having that extra HP on the walls delays the HRA player a lot more than just standard palisade walls over here. First night out here for the Muslim. Currently, I don't see a single spearman for Mista, which means that he has no answer to those scouts, no answer to that first knight coming in. In fact, I'm not even certain if we're going to see any kind of attempt from Mista going for spears, which would be a little ambitious. Okay, there is the barracks being dropped, so he's going to have some spears coming in for him. Gotta love the barracks placement. It's going to limit the movement of the opponent because that building is blocking some space on the right side. Scouts are trying to stop that one, but that's not going to work out that well. And look at that. Look at what Mista is doing. He's doing a cross wall over here, like this. Because this way, he's going to be able to block the easiest walling of the opponent that would be placed like that. That's a very, very smart thing to do here from Mista. And this way, he's going to prevent the opponent from being able to wall him in entirely. On the right side, you already see some walls coming up. The carcasses are blocking the straightforward wall. So the carcasses prevent the Muslim from just walling to the edge like this. And because of that, he has to walk the long way around, invest a little bit more wood into walling. It looks like the villager will be intercepted by the knight. Mista is just trying to get as much HP on those walls as he can, because obviously he's trying to limit that walling option for his opponent. It looks like he's going to lose the villager here. That's calculated casualty, I would say, with that knight appearing. It was obvious that the villager will never make it back home. Spearman low HP, getting back to the base. It looks like Mista will try to just heal that up with the prelate. Knight will take a fight against the spearman. There is no hardened upgrade on that spear, which means that the knight can actually take a pretty decent engagement against it. Mista still calm under pressure, only 62 heart rate at this point. He's got the gold he needs for Castle Age, and that's one of the powers of the Archon Chapel affecting your gold miners. He already has the gold, so he no longer has to gather it. He can just gather the food, which is safe underneath his town center, and he can get to Castle Age. Speaking of Castle Age, it looks like we're going to have no castle. It's going to be a 2 town center play from the DeMusliM. Now, this is one of the old school build orders for the Rus. This is a build which builds on the fact that the Golden Gate allows you to buy stone quite effectively. 200 gold spent for 300 stone using the Golden Gate is a very effective way to obtain stone for the second town center. This was the first build order that incorporated the use of the Golden Gate for the Rus. Before that, in the first days of Age of Empires 4, the Kremlin was used as the #1 landmark to age up to Feudal Age, but once people figured out that they can buy stone to build a second town center with the Rus, they just started using the Golden Gate, and for like a solid 1 month or so, before the Fast Castle build order was developed and the Horse Archers became very powerful, this was the traditional build, and it looks like one scout gets surrounded over here. That's going to be an easy kill over here for Mista. Villagers rioting, taking down one scout, 3 scouts get away. The key thing here for Mista is that he leaves one opening to the south of his base, which means that he can leave his base. Now, the bad news is that he's gonna have to walk a lot to pick those relics up. This one is rather close, but the others, here, here, and here, those are very far away. As I said, Mista does have a relic inside his base as well, so he will only need to go for one of those very far away relics. And indeed, one scout and the spearman guarding that relic for the time being. It looks like there's another villager being pulled, so I would assume that we are going to see a walling attempt over here for the DeMusliM. He knows very well that Mista is up to Castle Age, Regnitz Cathedral is complete, and Mista is already walking towards that relic here. He's careful. You can see that Mista is careful. He wants to make sure that his plot won't get intercepted at that relic. Now, there is going to be no aggression from the DeMusliM towards that relic, so it's going to be fine. Nice micro, beautiful micro here by the DeMusliM. He's going to use the scouts to soak up the damage of the opponent's spearman, and then uses the knights to charge in. And now you're seeing an attempt to wall him in. This could be troublesome for Mista, because if he gets walled in now, he's going to be in trouble. It's going to take some effort for the DeMusliM to make those walls happen, but he's got some knights to escort that villager. Mista has to push right now, because otherwise it's going to be too late for those walls. Once again, wall foundations being rushed up as we speak over here, and with that, the villagers, or excuse me, the spearmen, will start burning their way through these walls. I think this is not a wall that Mista can get through. Mista is going to be trapped within his own base over here, and the MVP of this one, oh, look at that! Look at that sandwich coming in at the edge of the map. One tile was missing, and this is gigantic, because now you're trying to focus down that villager, and look at the prelates. One prelate is blocking the crossing, so it's not possible for the DeMusliM to finish the wall. The other prelate is standing behind, which will just basically be responsible for healing the first prelate that's taking damage. That's a 100 IQ move here from the Mista. Look at that. He's just trying to use that low choke point, and now the walls are being deleted because the DeMusliM is realizing that he needs a good surround over here. I don't think that Mista can win this fight over here, and in fact his prelates might get surrounded over here. One prelate goes down to the knights, the second prelate is about to get taken down, but Hardened Spearman getting to the battlefield might be just in time, and indeed, it is an in-time appearance of those spears for Mista. What a move. That was a clutch move from Mista. It was a great performance by the DeMusliM. He almost managed to pin his opponent inside his base, but he was just a little too short of making those walls, and Mista exploited that so perfectly. Now the spearman will take a good fight against all of those knights, and you see those expensive knights are now going down to the spears. One knight falls, a second knight falls, the third knight could also be taken down. Abbey of the Trinity on the way for the Muslim, so he's getting closer and closer to picking up those relics himself, and his opponent is yet to pick up any of the relics from the Dale area. Imagine what would be the case here for the Muslim if Mista didn't even have a relic on his hill. This would still be 0 relics for the blue player, so the performance here for the Muslim is still great. And part of this is the power of those fortified palisade walls. Because one thing that shouldn't be underestimated is that with the fortified palisade walls, Mista isn't even attempting to break out here because he knows fully well that it would take forever to burn those walls down. Knight approaching over here for the Muslim. I think Mista has to pop a Vololo here to discourage the Knight from charging in. He needs to pop the Vololo. He pops the Vololo. He could have tried that preemptively, but I think this Prelate is going to go down here. Little too late to the party. The Knight charged in, and this way the Prelate gets picked off. And I do believe that the first Warrior Monk is approaching. And that's the thing here. The Warrior Monk will take its time going backwards with the relic, but what you want to accomplish is just pick up that relic before the HRE player is able to, and it looks like the Muslim is using his map control by picking up the boar as well on the right side. He's playing this one so well, and he's just pinning his opponent inside his base. Behind this one, the Muslim also has an 18 villagers lead, so not only does he have the map control, he also has an extra villager count over the opponent, and since Mista only has 1 relic, you cannot really say that the Dragonite's Cathedral is giving much to Mista. Now, Mista is thinking about fast imp at this point. Look at the resources. I think Mista is slowly acknowledging the fact that he might be stuck with 1 relic, and he just wants to build on pure villager advantage. Because remember, 1 relic with the Dragonite's Cathedral is 300 gold per minute. If the Rus player picks up all 4 that are remaining in the Dale area, that would be 400 gold per minute. So it's not like Mista's gold income would be weaker by that much compared to the Muslim. It looks like Mista is going to be able to yoink that 1 relic. That's all that he can get from this one. The Muslim retreated for a time being, and Mista will be able to grab that 2nd relic. That's all that he can ask for at this point, and I have to say, Mista has to feel satisfied with the fact that he was able to grab 2, because, let's be honest, he had 0 control over this Dale area, almost got walled into his base, but now he's building that Palace of Swabia, and suddenly he's gonna be able to cut into that villager deficit really fast. And the most important thing is that he's gonna have Imperial Age, and one thing that Imperial Age will give him is firepower. Firepower with bombards to just burn down those walls to the ground, and the moment he burns down those walls, he could think about elite knights and just swarm the map with them. And the problem right now for the Muslim is that he's basing his entire strategy on the fact that Mista won't be able to raid him. If you look at the resource distribution for the Muslim, as you see over here, Hunt taken here, Boar taken here, he's basically focusing all his food economy to this Dale area. Which means that the moment Mista starts breaking out with some Imperial Age Knights, suddenly all of these are resources that the Muslim could be cut off from. And the Muslim is very far away from Imperial, because as fast as Rus are getting into Castle Age, they are rather pedestrian getting into Imperial. They will need to mine quite a lot of gold for that, they will need to gather quite a lot of food. The Muslim is probably thinking about Imperial at some point, and I would think he will be able to get there in like 1.5 to 2 minutes. But that is a big window for Mista to utilize. He's got a market as well to balance out his eco, using the Dragonite's Cathedral's gold income. He's got 2 relics right now. The Muslim secured the other 3, so it is going to be 600 gold per minute for Mista from the relics and 300 for the Muslim. So you can see that even with just 2 relics, the Dragonite's Cathedral is far superior compared to other civilizations picking up the relics. Also worth noting is the fact that it seems like we're going to have our Rus player slowly running out of food in the Dale area, or at least in the proxy bases that he started building around. Which means that he's going to have to transition to some sort of additional food eco. Could be berries in the Dale area, could be farms, but he's going to enter a transitional period soon, and that could be dangerous because his opponent is not in a transitional period. Boy oh boy, it is going to be the Spearman push. It is Riveted Chainmail, an upgrade that's Imperial Age for the HRE, and it makes their Spearman very sturdy in melee combat. And currently it's only Knights for the Muslim. In fact, it's not even a ton of Knights we're talking about. We probably have around 8 to 10 Knights on the battlefield. Now it's a little risky for the Mista. And the reason why this is risky is because if his opponent started thinking about switching to potentially Horse Archers or so, then the Spearman could easily be overrun. But at this point, given the fact that the opponent only has Knights, the Spearman will work out. That's Imperial Age coming in, I do believe, for the Muslim, and that's a great scenario for him, I have to say. He's not getting beaten that much to Imperial, but of course, Given the fact that DeMusliM has the Palace of Shrubia, oh, that's a bit of a scuffle on the right side over here. The Knights are just entering the gate, and there was no wars over here for Mista, so his economy is definitely raidable. The Spearman won't be able to take a fight against that many Knights, and Mista is going to have to adjust his Spearman to the right side. Now is the Riveted Chainmail upgrade in, so the melee defense of those Spearmen are very sturdy. It's going to be difficult for DeMusliM to take good fights over here. DeMusliM captured all 3 sacred sites, so now Mista is on a timer, and you could see for a brief moment that there are archer ranges being added. Now you can do 2 things with those. You can do horse archers or you can do Streltsy, and in this setup I think Streltsy would be the best unit for DeMusliM, because now we're entering the stage of late Imperial combat, and that is something that's dominated by the Rus. The HRE is a great civilization to get to Imperial fast. The Rus is a great civilization to fight in Imperial with. And it looks like the Spearmen will take a fight over here. They don't have the elite upgrade just yet, but they're still veteran Spearmen with high melee armor, so they will be able to take some good fights against the Knights over here. Looks like the Knight numbers are still overrunning them, however. Casualties are there for both sides, but of course, it looks like the Knights are getting away, and there is the Streltsy indeed. Given the fact that DeMusliM wasn't making horse archers as he was going up to Imperial, it was somewhat predictable that he's going to start dropping the Streltsy. That's a unit composition. Streltsy Springald is going to be a very difficult unit composition to beat for the HRE. In fact, I don't even think that they have a good response to this. This is a matchup that we have seen on Mongolian Heights between, I think, Lidakor and... who was it? It was a Mongolian Heights game, Rus versus HRE, and we've seen something very similar here when it comes to unit composition. This Streltsy plus Springald composition is so hard for the HRE to build, and it seems like we're also going to have the mobility component showing its power here. DeMusliM is going to maximize the efficiency of those Knights by getting some raids going. Of course, Mista can replace the villagers easily, and as you can see, his villager count is just as good as DeMuslim's is. It was Mongolian Heights Beastie QT versus Lidakor, I just checked that out. And it was the same matchup, Rus versus HRE. And in the end, the idea was that the Streltsy are able to beat back the infantry of the HRE, and then the Springalds will just snap down any Mangonels. Voes are still being burned through over here, not a single siege weapon for Mista, so it's going to take some time to burn down those Voes. And it looks like we're seeing some stables being added. Now, one of the weaknesses of mass Streltsy and Springalds could be mass cavalry, but I'm not exactly sure if Mista has time to build that up. It's 7 minutes and 50 seconds remaining from the Sacred Site victory. Looks like it's paused for whatever reason. Oh, it's being decapped in the middle. One hero Spearman is decapping that Sacred Site. 2 warrior monks are sent to try and deal with him. But if that Spearman stays alive, he might even neutralize the Sacred Site, and then it resets that Sacred Site countdown. And another Spearman is being sent in. Mista is being cheeky over here. He's realizing that he just needs to delay this one a tiny bit for him to build up his forces. And let's be honest, DeMusliM wasn't really guarding those sacred sites. I don't think that he was really counting on that sacred site victory by any means. He just kept them for the gold income, but now he's going to probably lose that sacred site countdown. But that's a problem, as weird as it sounds like. Because if that sacred site countdown resets, DeMista is given a lot more time to build up his forces, and right now, Mista is still building up his numbers. We're seeing some Landsknechte being added, which actually could be a reasonable unit against the Streltsy. Because the Landsknechte are rather low HP units, and every low HP unit that encounters hand cannoneers or the Streltsy will have a lot of overkill damage. Basically, when you do a ton of damage, but the opponent has low HP, a significant portion of that damage could be wasted. So for example, if I have a unit with 5 HP and I have a unit that fires a 1000 damage arrow, I wasted 995 damage. So the Streltsy work the best against high-value targets. Talk about, for example, men-at-arms that have much higher HP than the Landsknechte. They work a lot better against those. They're still going to hold their own against Landsknechte, I believe. And the only reason why it's going to be fine for the Rus is because I think the Landsknechte are too expensive to be used as sort of a cannon fodder over here. Here come the Streltsy. Castles will be placed right in front of each other, but there is bombards for the Rus players, so that's going to be a short-lived castle for our HRE player over here. He's going to try and repair this one, but he currently has no power to take down those bombards with him. There's a third bombard rolling in here as well for Mista. He's going to try and charge it with the infantry, and he's grabbing the Culverin. Now, the Culverin is going to be outranged by the fully upgraded Rus Springalds, but I don't see a single Springald yet. And if you can get some Culverins on the battlefield, you might be able to snipe those bombards before they kill the castle, though that seems unlikely. Bombards are packing up, however, the last bombard isn't going to be able to finish this off. The Culverin trying to take down that last bombard, and the infantry is charging in on the bombards, villagers being pulled to repair. Looks like they're going to be unable to keep that bang or that bombard alive. The Culverin taking down the other bombard over here, and that's a lot of siege going down the drain over here for the Muslim. The third bombard also gets picked off by the infantry. Mista just sacrificed so many spearmen and Landsknechte to try and take down those bombards, but he was able to take them down, and this gives a little bit more breathing room for him, and it gives him a foothold in the middle, and that's the most important thing. It gives him a foothold in the middle. He was able to keep that castle alive, and that's going to be an extremely important staging ground for him right now, adding some more Culverins. On the other side, the thing I'm concerned about for the Muslim right now is that I don't see a single Springald, which means he currently has no answer to the Culverin sniping his bombards. Behind this one, the economies are both well set up for the players, but as I said, I'm not exactly sure, as we could see for a brief moment the Streltsy killing the boar, pushing the Muslim up to 565 bounty, unlocking tier 3. But I'm not exactly sure how good the farming eco is for the Muslim, because as I said, he was about to enter a transitional period when his opponent reached Imperial. Now, if he was relying on hunts and berries, he's gonna be in trouble, because he won't really have a good food eco for the next 5 to 10 minutes. Probably not 10, but 5 minutes or so. But if he's yet to build up a farming eco, he could be in trouble here. Keep standing strong in the middle. You do have a cannon emplacement for Mista out there. And as things stand, it looks like we're gonna have 55 army versus 38. And it's a mass horseman push. Bows are up on the north for the Muslim. But the mass horsemen actually work quite nicely against the Streltsy, mainly because they can close the distance fast. And the Streltsy, while they will do quite a lot of damage to the horsemen are cheap and the Streltsy are expensive. And as I said, if the Muslim doesn't have a farming eco set up, and his entire food eco is raidable on the berries, that's going to be a disaster for him. The horsemen for a brief moment ignored all the Streltsy and then they jump on them. Villagers will have to make a run for this one, and this is turning into a disaster for the Muslim because he's starting to lose villagers left and right. The expensive Streltsy are being taken down by rather inexpensive horsemen. I think in the end, the Muslim will be able to win this fight here, but he's losing villagers and he's losing very expensive Streltsy to seemingly insignificant units of the Mista, and now Mista is starting to stretch out the field here. He's sending in some more cavalry to try and kill the stone miners. In the blink of an eye, the Muslim has just lost like 15-20 villagers. He still has a ton to work with, but now you're going to see the horsemen once again jumping on the Streltsy, and there are some Landsknechte with area damage, and that's the thing here. The horsemen will absorb the damage, and the Landsknechte will just shoot those coupled up Streltsy, and with that, those Streltsy will be taken down so fast. The idea is that the Streltsy needs to take down the Landsknechte first, because if they get close, they will just massacre those clustered up Streltsy. But if the horsemen absorb the damage, behind them the Landsknechte can creep up, close the distance, and then take down the Streltsy with their area damage, and that's exactly what we saw over there. Horsemen once again jumping on the bombards. That's a second bombard that gets taken down by the horsemen. For now, I think that the Muslim is going to be able to hold this position, but Mista is just getting more and more power on the battlefield, and it's full horseman gameplay from him. He's charging in with wave after wave of inexpensive light cavalry, and he's just showing his power over here. The problem for the Muslim right now is that, as I said, his food eco is not so powerful, and replenishing those units when your eco is not so powerful is going to be difficult. The Streltsy are horribly expensive, they're very valuable units, but they are horribly expensive, so are the bombards. So when you only have 1,000 food per minute, replenishing those Streltsy is much more difficult. Keep in the middle being shelled right now by Mista's forces, and if Mista gets that central site, he could even think about capturing the sacred sites right now. But it's all about the military numbers, 39 to 27, and Mista once again is just keeping up the pressure on the opponent with weaker units, but he's just everywhere. The horsemen are on the left, on the right. You can see that he's swinging around to the southern part of the map while also pushing this side. This is something that the Muslim is going to have to address, and that is going to be a window that will be utilized by Mista to facilitate a push in the middle. That's the thing that we're going to look at here. You have to send some forces here if you're the Muslim to the right side to protect that wall, and that's a window that Mista will be able to utilize to push into the middle. And that's exactly what the plan is for Mista here. Looks like the villagers are not repairing the walls just yet. Down south, it looks like a keep is exposed to cannon fire, but once again, a cavalry charge could try to take those down. If the Muslim had some spears over here, this would make it much more difficult for Mista to fight this on. A Mangonel also successful getting some damage done on those horsemen, but one of the bombards gets taken down in the smoke. The second bombard is also now a target to the horsemen. The Mangonel gets taken down, but the Streltsy get rid of the rest of the cavalry, so 2 bombards are kept alive. But it looks like the Muslim didn't even notice those horsemen breaking through the walls. I saw for a brief moment the Mangonel shelling those horsemen, so I think some of them already died. But I think the Muslim is too busy fighting this over here, and he might not even notice those horsemen breaking through the walls. He's sending a last-ditch effort to repair, and I saw Mangonel shelling those horsemen. There's a couple of dead bodies over there. Villagers might be just in time to repair. It looks like the walls are broken through here, but the horsemen will just disengage because there was just too much firepower to deal with. So the Muslim will be able to hold that position, but as I said, as he was paying attention over there, he's going to lose that sacred site in the middle. And if you look at the big gold mine spots, that's the problem for the Muslim. For a brief moment, let's just settle with the fact that the gold mine spawns were quite favorable for the Mista. All of the big gold mines are located in this radius. And the thing is that Mista is controlling those parts of the map. Now, of course, some of these gold mines are fairly reasonable for the Muslim to take. Like, these are reasonable gold mines. These are within the same distance compared to his base than they are compared to Mista's base. The problem for the Muslim is simply that he's not controlling the parts of the map which has the gold mines. Fort in the middle, once again, getting shelled by the bombards of the Mista. Both players at 200 population, army numbers much better for Mista, however, and you see he's fortifying the left side, he's dropping towers with bombard emplacements on them, sort of just suffocating his opponent at this point. The keep in the middle is getting taken down as we speak, so we're going to have an opportunity here for the cavalry of Mista to push in. Mista, he did lose one set so far, he did win one set so far, he's currently at match point and pushing his opponent. Mista was taken down by Lidakor, but then he took down Viper free too, and now he's about to potentially win a third game against the Muslim over here, and the Muslim, after taking down Viper free 1, he lost to Marine Lord free 0, and now he's going to have to make a very difficult hold happen over here to avoid losing to Mista free 0. Of course, the Muslim is not out of this game just yet, but as I said, the lack of map control is something that's going to start haunting the Muslim at this point, not just because of the gold control, also because of the wood control. Because at this point, we're looking at the Muslim potentially running out of resources on top of his own hill. In fact, I'm not even sure how much resources he has over there. That's a beautiful position for the Mangonels, raining down death on that one bombard. But well, Mangonels are kind of bad taking down siege weapons, so it's going to take quite a lot of effort for that bombard to be taken down. While the Mangonels are working, they're slowly taking down that bombard, but look at the cavalry coming in from the southern part. Bombards were sent over here by the Muslim to deal with the towers, but he's got no escort to it. Not a single escort unit. The Streltsy are a little bit too much behind, and you're going to have 2 bombards taken down here. A third bombard also goes down, and this is the problem here for the Muslim. He's getting his attention stretched out in multiple directions because Mista has the mobility advantage. The Streltsy are so slow, and you see, now that they engage, they will take a good fight against those horsemen, but the resource efficiency of this fight is also going to be on the side of Mista. And this is what Mista has to do, starve his opponent out of gold, because it's going to be impossible to replace the Springles and the Streltsy just relying on the gold income coming from the Abbey of the Trinity, having garrisoned 3 relics, and of course the Golden Gate selling resources. For the Muslim, he's going to need a lot more gold income to be able to just keep spamming the Streltsy and keep getting Springles and Bombards out himself. He's running out of wood as well, which is going to be an even bigger concern. Now, truth being told, Mista's wood income was 0 just a second ago, so he probably ran out of forests in his own base as well. And now, you might actually see the battle intensifying on this side of the map, because you still have a lot of gold to control. Both players do have relics, but what about wood? That's probably the most precious resource right now, something that the Muslim banked up 3,000 of, and both players still having access to wood lines, but that could soon change over here. Once again, Mista will try to break through on the right side here. Villagers are being pulled to repair the walls. That should be enough to repair the walls, as you see. Now Mista is capturing sacred sites, and now he's starting to stretch out the attention of the opponent here. You're going to start looking at the knights breaking through the right side. They're trying to push through the left, and you see all the Streltsy are pulled to the right, which means that on the left side there is no one defending those walls. I'm not even sure if the Muslim noticed that push just yet. The horsemen will break into the base, and as I said, no one is noticing these horsemen burning down the walls over there, and I think that there is a push in the middle assembled by Mista as well. Behind this one, he's capping the sacred sites, and he is having so many horsemen break into the base of the opponent. The target is obvious. It's the food eco. You want to make sure that the food eco of the Muslim is just as dysfunctional as possible, but reality is that the Mista's food eco is great, and the Muslim's food eco is next to non-existent. I don't see farms. He has 1300 food per minute, but at this stage in Imperial, that's not spectacular. So you gotta wonder how many farms DeMusliM even has. 3 sacred sites now captured over here for DeMista, and he's not messing around. He wants to finish this game here. He saw in the previous game how a seemingly impossible comeback can be mounted. And he also knows that in theory, the Rus unit composition will be able to beat the HRE in Imperial. So he's going to say, okay, I want to make sure that you are on a timer. 9.5 minutes left to go. DeMusliM doesn't have to rush this one, but he's going to have to neutralize one sacred site. Now let's talk about which sacred site is the most reasonable to try and neutralize. This one is very far deep in the territory of Mista. We do have a fight on the left side, by the way. Streltsy being pulled back. So this sacred site is next to impossible. This one is heavily fortified. You have keeps nearby. So I would think that this sacred site on the right side is probably the place where you can push the best. The problem is that the moment you push this sacred site, Mista is going to have a window to push either the central part of the map or just raid your lumberjacks, and this is the problem here. You will have to simultaneously protect your economy and also push one of those sacred sites. Those are being made right now by DeMusliM on the left side. For the time being, he's going to be able to get those walls up. Streltsy will stand strong and repel the attack of the cavalry. Mista currently sitting at 175 population, a little low. Lost quite a lot of units over here in battle, but he's going to snipe down 2 mangonels. That had to be a miss micro over there from DeMusliM. He was probably focusing elsewhere, and those mangonels just started rolling outwards. He either right-clicked the unit and then they just followed, or he just tried to move out and then he didn't realize there was a gate going over there. But whatever happened, he just lost 2 mangonels out there. Key defensive position established by DeMusliM on the left side. He's going to secure that stone mine. He's going to secure the wood. 8 minutes left on the sacred site countdown as we speak. And DeMista is the map controller. If you look at DeMusliM's resource income, 300 gold per minute, basically only coming from the relics in the Abbey of the Trinity. No more gold income from mining for DeMusliM. DeMista still has all the gold mines under his control. In terms of lumberjacking, both players still have access, and DeMusliM has a quite significant resource bank. The problem for DeMusliM right now is that he's pop-capped, so even though he's got a ton of resources, he can't really spend them right now. His forces are dangerous. The Streltsy, the Springolds potentially to support them. If there were some spears, it would be even scarier because they could brace against the cavalry. And if you have some sort of meat shield in front of these hand cannoneer type units, like the Streltsy, then they are becoming a lot more effective, simply because they'll be able to just fire untouched. Mangonel, Springolds, and Bombards fortifying the forest over here for DeMusliM. Meanwhile, there is only 7 minutes left on the clock. DeMista also has a ton of cavalry queued up over here. Keep in mind that wood is running low, so soon you will have to turn towards non-wood costing units. And as weird as it sounds like, right now for Mista, who's got 6,000 food in the bank and 1,700 gold, he needs to start thinking about adding knights. Because the knights don't cost wood, and he's starting to run low on wood. As you see, it's 1,000 gold wood per minute for him right now, but the forests are starting to run dry, and it looks like DeMusliM is going to try and push this southern angle, which is probably the most difficult one to push. There are multiple forests over here which make it a little more difficult to approach this destination, and then multiple bombard towers already set up, fortifications coming in already, and you see quite a lot of infrastructure over here as well for Mista. So this is going to be a difficult push over here. DeMusliM is going to open by dropping a castle over here, and look at that. Mista is going to start walling off the northern side. He knows very well that he cannot let his opponent try to push the northern side as well while he's distracted. Keep is being built as we speak over here. That would be the forward position that DeMusliM can use as a staging ground. But there is a bombard shelling that keep. 3 culverins as well. Culverins don't do much against that keep, but the bombard does. And it looks like the keep is not getting repaired. The second keep is being dropped by DeMusliM. Stone walls will prevent the enemies from just running into the sacred sites. And up north, DeMista will be able to secure the sacred site. So it's all about this one at the bottom. 5.5 minutes left to go. So DeMusliM can still take his time. You could potentially consider deleting some villagers here for him and replace it with army, because you need to win this battle here. And the thing is that he's got a fairly significant resource bank, especially in terms of food and wood, and he's running low on choppable wood anyways, so might as well delete some lumberjacks. Like you see, so many villagers building this keep at this point. Might just go kamikaze and mine that gold. That's exactly what he's thinking about. But the bombard tower is just massacring the villagers out there. He wasn't expecting the bombard tower to be there. The mining camp was taken down, and the villagers clustered up at the place of the mining camp will just be taken down. You see, the mining camp was wiped out by the first bombard shot. Well, it indeed is turning into a kamikaze mining operation at this point. DeMusliM down to 59 villagers, but as I said, it's going to be one last hurrah. After that, he's probably gonna have to rebuild his villager population, but he can't really afford to just sit at 100 army at this point. And then 13 army right now for him, only 63 for Mista. So Mista is heavily outnumbered. In fact, Mista just deleted a bunch of villagers. You could see that for a brief moment. He was at 115 villagers, deleted quite a few of them because he knows that he needs those army numbers as well. He needs to replace them with siege, some cavalry. As I said, some heavy cavalry could be something that you see on the battlefield, simply because wood is starting to become a luxury commodity for Mista. Whereas for knights, these would be a very, very good meat shield type unit that can just charge and take down the bombards. And then even though you lose quite a lot of them, you just delay this push as much as possible. Meanwhile, 4 minutes left on the clock. The bombards are crawling closer. Strauss is setting up against the cavalry. Mista is willing to charge in, focusing down on what seems to be the mangonels. Culverin is also opening up against the bombards. However, a bit of a traffic jam over here will result in 2 bombards being taken down. But the springboards of the Rus, outranging the Culverins, are really coming into play right now. And the Culverins are getting taken down. Maybe Mista deleted those villagers a little too late, because now he's waiting for those reinforcements to arrive. But those reinforcements are still far away from arriving. Had he deleted those villagers 2 minutes ago, those reinforcements would already be on the battlefield. DeMusliM, 3.5 minutes left to go. He's gonna have to start crawling closer and closer to those walls over here. The gate is almost broken through, by the way, so the Streltsy are waiting over there to rush in. 3 minutes left to go. It's a last hurrah from DeMusliM, but now if you think about it, DeMista is down to 69 villagers, 46 army only, and that's alarming for Mista. Because Mista is now losing his villagers, and guess what? Mista is out of wood. This is why I said that you will have to start transitioning to an army that doesn't cost wood, and I think DeMusliM is going to do it. DeMusliM is going to neutralize that sacred site, and as much of a heartbreaking defeat it was for him in the previous game, now he's pulling off a massive victory here, potentially. Because we're seeing something very similar compared to the previous game here. Just one player controlling the rest of the map, 80%, 90% map control, population, unit composition advantage, but suddenly the other player is just able to get some sort of momentum. This time around, that's going to be the neutralization on that sacred side. And as I said, because DeMusliM's resource bank was so big, he could afford to delete villagers, replace them with army. Mista could do something very similar. The problem is that by the time he is replacing the villagers with army, the battle is lost. He needed those units 2 minutes ago, so he could take the decisive fight. And as you see, now he's down to 32 villagers, and the Palace of Swabia will allow him to get those villager numbers back up anytime he wants to, really. But the problem right now for him is that he's just waiting for those units to appear on the battlefield. He is still 2 minutes or so away from having the effect of that villager deletion show on the battlefield. Now, I wonder if that group of horsemen will just try to rush in and snap landmarks. Because you get the feel that that's the plan. I'm still unsure why we're seeing horsemen being utilized when he's clearly out of wood instead of knights. Knights would be better in basically every way. Now you're seeing those bombards crawling up. Stone walls not finished on the northern side actually here. Currently Mista at 32 villagers. He's got the Ragnis Cathedral with 2 relics as well, of course. But you get the feel that now Mista is in trouble. He's still making army. He's got 46 horsemen queued up, by the way. You can see that on the far left. So he's got some cavalry queued up. I think it's going to be one big push for the landmarks. It's so weird. Like, a big push like this towards the landmarks tells me one thing. Mista thinks that this game is lost. And he might actually be right about that. The thing is that he could have taken one decisive fight if those villagers were deleted earlier. Now it's a little too late for that. But if he wants to do it, he needs to wait as long as possible. Like, seriously. The problem is that now DeMusliM has a chance to do this. And the moment DeMusliM sees his opponent trying to snipe landmarks, what he's going to do is try to spearhead into the base of Mista and try to take down those landmarks with the bombards. So it's going to be a race for the landmarks at this point. Mista is getting ready with the cavalry. The striking angle is going to be there. How many is that? I think it's 122. It's all his army. Oh, some knights could do so much more here. If you had a forward siege workshop for bombard, that would be working wonders as well. Because potentially you could just blast through those walls quite a bit. Remember, no stone walls accessible for Rus. The HRE can get some stone walls to prevent the enemies from running in. Of course, bombards can take them down, but the stone walls for the HRE could slow down the advance of the Rus. Whereas for the Rus, what can they do against 100 cavalry appearing in their base? And there is another component. DeMusliM has low mobility. His entire army is disturbingly slow. So if those horsemen break into his base, he's in the danger of losing all the landmarks before he can adjust his army's position. And here it goes. 150 knights. It's actually going to be some horsemen jumping in the middle as well. That's going to be the distraction. Mista is sacrificing these horsemen to just distract his opponent. It's all about that. He's sending them in, making his opponent focus on the other side. The question is, did the Muslim notice that group of horsemen trying to blast their way through the walls? Not even a villager to repair. This could be a disaster for the Muslim. Not a villager to repair. The horsemen are in. And what is the Muslim going to do against this? He's pulling back his bombards. I don't think that the Muslim may have noticed this, because the reaction seems to be so small. He's calling off his forces now. Spearmen and Streltsy are coming in. Here comes the cavalry. Villagers need to be pulled. Villagers have to be cannon fodder at this point. Distract the opponent as much as possible. The Abbey of the Trinity, the town center is out there. The problem is that the high armory is so exposed and the spearmen are coming back. Here comes Mista splitting up his forces. It's going to come down to that high armory. The rest can be ignored because the spearmen are coming in. High armory getting taken down over here. It is down to just 15% HP. Once again, can Mista turn around an absolutely unbelievable game? 2 landmarks gone out of the 3 landmarks gone out of the 4. Just the starting town center remaining, and it's going down in HP, and it looks like the Muslim is going to be out. What a way to end this set for Mista, and once again, he does the trick. I mean, he's just a magician right now. He's laughing about it. He knows that this is not a game that he should have won. And what a victory for him once again. Oh, he's probably saying, look, this is not a game that I should have won. And in general, the last 2 games being absolutely spectacular, somewhat crazy. And in the end, both of the games just telling you the patience of Mista. He was fully aware that he's in a very difficult position, and then he just waited for a large enough army to pile up and went for the landmark snipes. I do believe that when the developers see this entire set, I think they should look at the landmark concept as a victory condition, because in many ways it delivers us some crazy, some cheesy games like you're seeing over here, and these were indeed spectacular moments, some of the biggest highlights of the N4C tournament. But on the other hand, you also have to just feel the pain for the Muslim, who was leading clearly in the previous game, lost to the landmarks, and then he was dominating the last 10 minutes of this game, yet once again, lost to the horsemen out here. But let's not take credit away from Mista, because these are not easy things to pull off. As easy as it may sound to just send in 100 horsemen to snipe the landmarks, if the Muslim notices those first horsemen burning through the walls, he could have reacted with some more layers. So the distraction element was quite significant. And in the end, by the time the Muslim noticed what was going on, it was just a little too late. It came down to that high armory, because that was probably the closest landmark to the army of the Muslim. And in the end, he wasn't able to protect that, and it was clear that he wasn't going to be able to reach those horsemen pushing from the north, taking down the town center. And with that, the Mista wins a 3-0 set over here, meaning that the Muslim now lost 6 games in a row. 3-0 yesterday versus Marine Lord, now 3-0 against the Mista, and the Muslim, after starting in a great shape against the Viper, now he's in a tough spot. He's not out yet, but he's going to have to start gathering things together, because now he's getting one step closer to a potential elimination over here. Whereas for Mista, after a rough start against Lidakor, he took down Viper, and now he takes down the Muslim. Excellent performance from him, to a certain extent some cheesy games, but one thing is sure, we have seen some crazy highlight moments.